Friends, this is going to be part one of a two-part video where I'm going to be talking about adding on to the path. I'm going to call it the path extension. I started a path last year, and I'm going to take you through each of the steps of how this path is being added. It's done now, but we're going to go back and see the beginning, and then what I'm going to do to get this bed ready behind me for all the beautiful plants that you now see. Just a couple weeks ago, this was nothing, and now it has planting. So I want to show you what I did to get this bed ready, how I made sure it was good soil, good quality for the plants I'm putting in, and how this path was put in really quickly, efficiently, but also looks seamless. So let's get started so you can see the whole process. What I want to start by doing is showing what my overall hope for this to be and what it's really going to look like when we're talking about a path. So last year I started with a section of what I call my master plan in a path. And that's because guess what? Gardening, sometimes especially what I would call the more investment type gardening, which is not only, it just takes a lot of time, but it takes money to have certain hardscaping things done. And so this takes some saving, some planning. So I do it in sections, because it can be a lot. It's also a lot of mess. So you kind of have to decide how much you want to do at once. So last year I did a big L in a corner of my yard of a path, and it is a 4x4 limestone edging with a 3/8 inch contractor chip pea gravel. It's a wash stone put in the middle. And I have it laid down professionally because in the past, and we're going to talk about the area, I have put some of this down myself, pea gravel, thinking I'm doing a good job, and I don't. It isn't even, it doesn't get done correctly, the lines aren't quite straight. And that's why I want the kind of overall bones of this area to be done correctly. And so the path is the line and the bone that I want to start with. That's going to be done correctly. So let's show you the beginning of it, because today's sod guard started getting stripped off the area. So you can see this behemoth, what looks like a behemoth of a new bed, but I'll show you why it really isn't as big as it looks. So from my old path area that was in last year with all these plantings, we're going into what now will be an extension of it. So right from here, this path is going to go straight all the way down to the vegetable garden, but it will also tee off. So I had all the sod stripped off too, because that's a lot of work. And I'm going to do a big planting all along these woodward arborvitae. I will do a little bit of planting right here. I haven't actually fully decided on this section yet, but I had them take the sod out because if nothing else, I'll just put a nice thick layer of hardwood mulch down, because then I don't have to take the sod off at some point when I decide I would like to. So if we walk down, you can see this line right here. That's the path. So that's what exactly that path will just keep extending. And when I get down here a little ways, I want you to see right where it's going to tee off. So you can see right here they have a post where their string line was. This is the center of where a other path is going to tee off right into my fire pit area. I call it my fire pit area, and you'll see why here. But as we walk, this sod will probably be stripped here soon, and it will go a path right into this more formal area where I have more of a parterre garden here. I had put some metal edging in at one time, and it just has not held well. The plastic underneath was not good. I hadn't ever really leveled it off well overall. And so it's all going to be edged in the same 4x4 inch limestone. It's going to have my curves in the center. And I usually keep a big kettle here, and this is where I have a fire. If I want to have kind of friends over or entertain around a fire, it will be in this area. So over the last week, I removed the pea gravel in this area that I had put in about 10 years ago now myself. I scooped it, raked it, put it into a skid loader as much as I could, and then got it ready so they could start on this. But what I'm really excited for is how my overall master vision, as I would call it, is slowly coming to fruition. Even though it's little bits maybe every year, this feels like a bigger bit. And especially this long path, it now has a place to end at the vegetable garden. But overall, what I'm doing is creating more intimate spaces within my yard and trying to have a path that slowly takes you to each place. It'll take years to have things established and have things grow correctly. Once they do, I think you'll really start seeing it. Can't wait to keep just showing you all the different parts here during the day, what's going to be happening. So I'm going to give a quick little update here along the process so you can see what's going on while the work is being done. I want to walk you through what they're working on right now, how quickly really it is going, and how you're going to see it really come together so you can understand the steps of this. If we look up that way, you can see where my current path ends, but it's going to now just seamlessly go into this new path all along here. And again, it's 4x4 limestone edging is what I'm using. That's an Iowa quarried stone. That's why I like using it. I like the way it ages in patinas too. And then what's going underneath, which you can see a big roll of right there, is a geomesh, and it's a commercial grade. And you know, I've used this in other projects in the past, and obviously in previous landscape work I've done, I know how good a product this is. And this is really what, to me, is going to make sure that obviously this path has durability and longevity. So to make sure that soil doesn't build up, I will be blowing it off with a blower every so often, whether when I mow, maybe just weekly, just to get debris off of it so soil doesn't compost and create inside this path. But what I have right here is 3/8 inch crushed stone, and that's what they're laying out in the path. And then it's about a 4-inch layer usually. And the reason I'm going with this is pea gravel in my area, not easy or economical to find, same with crushed granite. So this is going to be a bump out in the path that I can put a table or some benches, just depending how I want to use it. And then you can see, now that they have really the tedious work done, which was really up at this more formal area. This area was where really you saw in the previous, when I showed, was a big problem area because I did not do it correctly. I didn't have underlayment. I mean, that was 12 years ago I put it in, and none of that was really done correctly. So they've spent the time to beautifully lay out my same shape I had with the limestone and edge all of these beds in it so I can seamlessly mow over them, which is what's really nice. And then they go right along with this path. So this will right here butt up to that bump out in the main path. And that's where, again, I could entertain if I want to. This big planting area will be tons of perennials that are going to mimic the bed I have up there. So you can see really, it's a pretty easy project for them because they're obviously so good. The time-consuming part was obviously anytime you have more cuts. So that circle, anything I have that has detail, that's what takes more time. When it comes to a straight run, that's going to be quicker. So even if you're thinking of like cost savings, straight lines are going to be quicker and easier than curves and all those tight spaces. But you can see right here, this is my then end point, which is the vegetable gardens. I happen to have this sitting in my back shed. It's just a big 4-foot limestone step. I like how it seamlessly now ends it, and you end up right here in the vegetable garden, which is just kind of, to me, a fun space. So when I turn back around, you see eventually here, it's gonna be a beautiful path down here where you can walk across there, and then a beautiful planting behind it. It has been now a few more days, and all the path and area is done, so I wanted to quick run over everything that's done, where it's at, and what we're gonna do today, which is really now gonna prepare the bed so it can be planted. So this has been a multi-day process, of course, for the path being done, but now that's all done, you can really see the overall vision. So this is where the path was. You can kind of see a line there where it seamlessly goes in just because this rock now is new and that was old. But if we're looking down this way, you can see it extends all the way to the vegetable garden, which is exactly what I wanted. It has a bump out. Then that's gonna be mostly, I think I'm gonna put a table there eventually, maybe for some entertaining. If not, I could just put a couple benches, some containers. We'll kind of see for sure. I have some different thoughts, so we'll see how that comes together. I already started placing a few things. I had some extra agave in these containers that I had stands. I decided to set them here. We'll see for sure. So it goes all the way down to the vegetable garden, but then here what happens, you can see it goes perfectly to where I put my big kettle back there. So if I wanna have a fire, this is where I usually have a fire, or do any of those things. I set my fig trees here, my citrus. So you can see my shape that was there originally is still there. Some of the edges, like I said, I wanted the lines on the new limestone to be absolutely correct, straight, and in line with each other. So that means some of my boxes that I had originally put in might be a little off from this new line, but I can either let them grow to correct themselves or eventually switch some of them out if needed. But the lines that are here now are correct, and that's what to me was really important. What we are gonna focus on today is this new bed. Now, these beds that had boxwood around them, obviously I'm gonna be changing them at some point. So I'm leaving some of these boxwood so I can move them other places. Those are not the point right now, so don't worry about those. What we're gonna worry about is all this new area that's completely unplanted. So all this soil is really, if I remember correctly, when I moved in here, the field came up into here somewhat and I pushed it back. So some of this I think did used to be planted in traditional row crop field, but most of this soil is just nice, loamy, black Iowa topsoil. Where I live in Southeast Iowa, I don't have a lot of rocks in my soil. I'm really lucky with good soil. But what I really want to focus on is getting this soil ready because it was drove on here when they were doing the path with some heavier equipment. So it does have some areas where it's a little bit compacted, at least to be able to plant in, but I also want to improve the soil just as much as I can in a short time. Different things to think about when you're preparing any planting area for a bed, not talking about the plants, this is just about the bed itself, is thinking about the soil. Does it well draining? So when water and rain come, does it sit on that area and not drain for a while, or does it drain pretty quickly? That only means that you maybe could assess of how to amend it differently if you know those things. So this has no drainage issues. It drains very easily. But what I want to worry about here is just adding some nutrients, some organic matter to the soil. While it's good soil, that doesn't mean it has a ton of organic matter. Nothing's been done to it. No compost has been added, no fertilizers or anything for as long as I've lived here. Those clouds look fake, and I promise you they're not. So what I do have up here, and you're going to see me start laying this, is a nice amount, you can see it here, of Espoma's Land and Sea compost. Now the reason I'm using the bagged product, I have big compost piles. They're not ready. So the last couple of years, I used all my piles a few years ago and started new ones. And my new ones are just not ready yet. They still have some weed seed in them that grows, so they need to sit and bake longer. So I'm using the Land and Sea compost, which I've been using both in my garden and in other planting beds I get ready. What I love about it is it has a great texture, so it drains really well. It has a nice lightness to it that works really well into the soil, but it also has great organic matter. And that to me is what's important, because the one thing we can always do to improve soil, your soil can look black and beautiful like this, but you can always add organic matter to it that's going to help improve the soil, not only for lightness, but also it helps retain moisture into that soil. So while compost is really good for the soil, it also is really good at grabbing onto moisture and holding it in place for a while when needed. Not that it holds on to it so it doesn't drain, but it really is good at helping it retain what it needs, along with some great organic matter too. So what I think I like to do is I did take a tractor through here before the path was in, and I did till it with a tractor, but it's compacted quite a bit again. So I have my rototiller here, but first what we're gonna do is lay out lots of the compost so I can work it in. What I'm doing first is just laying these bags roughly evenly out in my area. Now you can use this as a top dressing, which would be like 2 to 3 inches maybe on top of your area, almost like a mulch. You can also do what I'm gonna do, is just use it as an amendment, meaning I'm gonna work it into the top 4 inches of the soil with a rototiller. This is just, to me, a nice way to add that organic matter directly to the soil as an amendment. You could also, if you're planting a large tree, you could put this right into the soil, into the hole you dig. You could amend up to like 50% with your native soil, I would say. And that's really good if you feel like you have a clay heavy soil. I think it's a great idea to amend slightly with something like a compost, because it's gonna help loosen that soil, better drainage, things like that. So I'm gonna move this pallet out of the way, and then I'm just gonna start opening all these up, dumping them, then we'll rototill. Kip is inspecting right now. He approves of the compost, but you can see I just really kind of laid it in a pile. Now, roughly this would probably actually only be about 1 inch of coverage in this whole area if I spread it out, if that. I'm using this more as just an amendment, not as a total top dressing. If I felt like my soil was even lacking more, I definitely would add more. But you can see when you're looking at this, it has almost a mulch-like beautiful potting soil feel. It's light, but there's no soil in this. This is compost. There's a big delineation between what compost is versus a topsoil. This is not topsoil. This is not heavy. This has no sand in it. This is a nice, light compost that is broken down material into a really nice organic matter. You can see there's small pieces of wood in there. So those are going to break down and compost even more into this ground, which is what's really important here. And you can see how beautiful it is. So what I want to do now is really mix it into the top few inches. To do that, I'm going to use a tiller, just a walk behind, just because since I have the path here with some edging I want to be careful with, that bump out, I want to be agile enough that I can work around it. That's why I'm going to use a rototiller that I can walk behind so I can easily stop it, have a lot of control. Don't use anything with a tractor because I don't want to kick it onto the path or, really hurt the path. I'm not done yet, but I just wanted to show you the in-between. So it's gonna take a few passes. It just depends how compacted the soil is. Now, the important thing to remember, when soil is raw and open like this and you go and till it, what it does is it brings up thousands of weed seeds. So this is not going to stay open for long. I'm going to plant it, then I'm going to mulch it well. That's going to suppress the seeds, retain moisture. And we'll talk about that in the next video, but I want to really make sure I drive home that you don't just want to till soil or have open soil and leave it for weeks on end. Many weeds will sprout and they could get ahead of you. So you want to do this right before you're ready to plant. And I wanted such a big open area because I have a lot of small plantings going in here, so I needed it to be open. So I'm going to finish tilling and show you what it looks like. As you can see, it can be a little bit of a dirty job. Now, I did go over it quite a few times, and again, it really depends on the application of what you're planting. If you're going to plant a few foundational plants or structural plants, just a few shrubs, you may not want to till up a big area. In that case, you might want to be able to put something over the ground, whether it's cardboard, whether it's newspaper, things like that, and not really have to bring up all this sod. This is going to be a large planting area of a lot of naturalizing perennials that I want to be able to reseed and move and grow into each other. So starting with a blank slate, starting with a tilled area, adding that compost is really going to be essential for that. But it now is pretty much ready to go. What I might do is rake it a little bit just to level it. And then we're gonna next time get started on planting everything. Hopefully it's all gonna get in. I'm waiting for a few things to come in yet to the nursery. And then it's all gonna be ready to go. And it's really fun plants. It's a few different things from the previous planting on the path I already have, but a few similar ones too. So we'll go over what I'm adding, why I'm adding it, kind of the do's and don'ts. You have to know what naturalizes, what doesn't, and what works in your area. And we'll all go over that next time. So I'm gonna keep working. Hopefully you enjoy this video, share it around, hopefully to inspire you or others to get excited to get going and know that we can do this. We can do hard things, we can transform our yard. I've been living here 14 years and I'm finally bringing some of my dreams and thoughts to fruition. It takes time and that's okay. Until then, I'm gonna level this out and can't wait to plant.